This is the richest Indian family in America, not a single household and not a corporation, but an extended network of families who share the same last name, Patel. Together, these families control more than half of all independently owned motels in the United States. That includes tens of thousands of properties spread across highways, small towns, and secondary cities in nearly every state. Most people have stayed in one of their motels at some point in their lives. Very few people realize it. The Patel family does not appear on billionaire rankings. They do not operate under a single corporate structure. They do not run a globally recognized brand, and they rarely speak to the media. Yet by asset ownership and long-term cash flow, they are one of the most successful immigrant business groups in American history. This did not happen quickly. It did not happen intentionally at first, and it did not happen in a way that was obvious from the outside. The Patel families did not arrive in the United States with money. Most arrived with limited savings, no credit history, and little understanding of how American business worked. The majority came from the Indian state of Gujarat, a region with a long tradition of trade, family business, and migration. In Gujarat, many families relied on small shops, informal lending, and tight-knit community relationships. Capital rarely came from banks. It moved through trust and reputation. That mindset would later become one of their biggest advantages. The first Patel immigrants arrived in the United States in the late 1960s and 1970s after changes in immigration law made it possible for more Indians to enter the country. Unlike many Indian immigrants who arrived as doctors or engineers, the Patel families did not come with professional credentials. They came looking for work. They entered an economy that was not particularly welcoming. Many spoke limited English. Most had no credit. Banks were reluctant to lend to them. Landlords were hesitant to rent to them. Insurance companies often refused to work with them. Employment options were limited. Gas stations, factories, convenience stores, and small retail jobs were common starting points. These jobs provided income, but they did not provide stability. At the same time, something unusual was happening across the United States. Thousands of small roadside motels were failing. These motels had been built decades earlier during the expansion of highway travel in the mid-20th century. By the 1970s, travel patterns were changing. Interstate highways redirected traffic. Large hotel chains began consolidating the market. Franchised hotels offered consistency that small motels could not match. Independent motel owners struggled. Occupancy declined. Maintenance was deferred. Profit margins collapsed. Many owners wanted out. Few buyers were interested. To most Americans, these motels looked like bad businesses. They were labor-intensive. They required constant maintenance. They produced inconsistent income, and they carried little prestige. To the Patel families, they looked like one of the only businesses they could realistically enter. Motels had several characteristics that mattered. They could be purchased cheaply. They generated daily cash flow. They did not require advanced English. And most importantly, they could be operated almost entirely using family labor. The first motels purchased by Patel families were often in poor condition. Some had broken signage. Others had outdated rooms or failing plumbing. Many were located in small towns far from major cities. Families pooled their savings to buy them. Parents, children, cousins, and relatives all worked together. They lived on site. They cleaned rooms themselves. They handled maintenance themselves. They ran the front desk themselves. By eliminating payroll expenses, Patel-owned motels could survive on margins that would bankrupt traditional operators. These motels were not immediately profitable. In many cases, they barely broke even. But they were survivable, and survival was enough. Over time, repairs were made slowly. Rooms were upgraded one at a time. Occupancy improved. Cash flow stabilized. As one family succeeded, other Patel families took notice. Information began to spread quietly within the community. Which lenders might approve loans despite resistance, which insurance companies could be negotiated with, which locations had reliable traffic, which mistakes to avoid. This information did not circulate publicly. It stayed within family networks. Motels were often sold from one Patel family to another. Capital stayed inside the network. Experience compounded. Risk was shared. By the late 1980s, Patel-owned motels were no longer rare. By the early 1990s, they were common. In some towns, nearly every independent motel was owned by a Patel family. Still, there was no visible consolidation. Each motel kept its original name. Each owner appeared independent. There was no national brand, no headquarters, no central authority. From the outside, nothing unusual appeared to be happening, but underneath, a system was forming. By the early 1990s, the Patel motel network had reached a size where informal success was no longer enough. What had started as individual survival stories was becoming a repeating pattern. Motels were being bought, stabilized, and passed along within the same community. Capital was circulating internally, knowledge was accumulating, and competition was quietly disappearing. At the same time, the families faced persistent resistance from outside institutions. Banks remained cautious. Insurance companies continued to deny coverage or charge inflated premiums. In some cases, insurers openly argued that Patel-owned motels posed higher risks, despite the fact that loss rates were often lower than average. Without insurance, loans could not be secured. Without loans, expansion was limited. This created a bottleneck. The response was predictable. The Patel families built their own financing system. Instead of relying on banks, families began lending to each other. Profits from one motel were used to help another family acquire a second or third property. Loans were informal, terms were flexible, trust replaced paperwork. Reputation mattered more than credit scores. If a motel failed, the loss was absorbed collectively. If it succeeded, the benefits stayed within the network. This system solved multiple problems at once. It reduced dependence on hostile institutions. It allowed transactions to move faster, and it kept ownership internal. While traditional buyers waited months for approvals, Patel buyers could close quickly. Sellers noticed. Motels that had sat on the market for months were sold to Patel families without complication. Over time, sellers began to prefer Patel buyers, not because of ethnicity, but because deals closed, payments were reliable, transactions were simple. At the same time, operations became standardized. The families did not innovate. They did not chase trends. They focused on consistency. Rooms were kept basic. Amenities were limited. Maintenance was handled in-house whenever possible. Supplies were purchased in bulk. Costs were controlled aggressively. Family labor remained central. Children worked front desks after school. Parents handled maintenance and bookkeeping. Relatives rotated shifts. This eliminated the largest expense most motel owners faced, labor. As a result, Patel-owned motels could remain profitable at occupancy rates that would bankrupt competitors. This mattered most in rural areas and highway towns, where demand fluctuated. When occupancy dropped, competitors failed. Patel motels survived. As more properties came under Patel ownership, a secondary effect emerged. Motels began selling almost exclusively to other Patel families. A family ready to retire sold to another family looking to expand. A family seeking a larger property sold a smaller one to a newer entrant. Properties rarely left the network. Capital rarely exited. Knowledge never left. This internal market stabilized prices and reduced risk. Mistakes were not repeated, lessons were shared, failures were contained. By the mid-1990s, Patel-owned motels dominated many local markets. In some regions, they owned nearly every independent property. Still, there was no visible monopoly. Each motel had a different name. Each owner filed separately. There was no centralized branding. This fragmentation protected the system. Regulators saw thousands of small businesses, not a single powerful entity. As the network grew, the second generation began to take control. Children of motel owners were educated in American schools. Many studied accounting, business administration, or engineering. Some worked in corporate jobs before returning to the family business. They brought structure. Formal bookkeeping replaced handwritten ledgers. Tax planning became sophisticated. Pricing strategies were adjusted based on seasonality and demand. Maintenance schedules were standardized. This increased profitability without changing the underlying model. At the same time, property values began to rise. Motels purchased cheaply decades earlier now sat on increasingly valuable land. Highway exits became commercial corridors. Urban sprawl reached previously isolated locations. What had once been marginal assets became strategic ones. This created leverage. Properties could be refinanced. Capital could be extracted without selling. That capital was then used to acquire additional motels. Growth accelerated without external financing. Debt was used cautiously, always tied to cash-flowing assets, never speculative. As portfolios expanded, some families diversified: apartment complexes, storage facilities, gas stations. But hospitality remained the core business. It was what they understood. It was where their advantage remained strongest. Hotel chains struggled to compete in this segment. Their cost structures were higher. Their labor expenses were fixed. Their decision-making was centralized. Patel owners were different. They could reduce expenses overnight. They could absorb short-term losses. They could wait. Chains were judged quarterly. Patel families thought in decades. This difference became critical during economic downturns. When recessions hit, chain-owned properties were sold. Independent owners defaulted on loans. Patel families bought selectively, often paying cash. The same pattern repeated. Economic stress removed weaker operators. The network absorbed their properties, slowly, quietly, relentlessly. By the early 2000s, Patel families controlled a majority of America's independent motels, and most people still had no idea. By the early 2000s, the Patel Motel network had reached a stage that few business groups ever reach. It no longer needed to grow to remain powerful. Its advantage was structural. Most viable independent motels were already owned by Patel families. New construction in the motel segment had slowed. Large hotel chains were focused on higher-end brands and urban markets. The low to mid-range roadside segment was largely ignored. That segment was already controlled. At the same time, the cost of entry for new operators had risen dramatically. Properties were more expensive. Insurance requirements were stricter. Labor laws were more complex. Financing standards were tighter. The advantages that had allowed the first Patel families to enter the industry no longer existed. Family labor was harder to rely on. Regulatory compliance required professional management. Margins were thinner. Mistakes were costly. New immigrants could not replicate the original strategy. The door that had been opened decades earlier was now mostly closed. This protected the network. Motels rarely left Patel ownership. When they did, they were often sold at prices that only existing owners could afford. Capital continued to circulate internally. Knowledge remained internal. The system reinforced itself. Over time, many Patel families transitioned away from daily operations. The second and third generations were less willing to live on site or work long shifts at the front desk. Instead, professional managers were hired. Technology was introduced: booking systems, revenue management software, centralized accounting. But ownership did not change. Control remained within the family. This shift reduced labor intensity while preserving cash flow. It also allowed families to scale portfolios without increasing personal workload. Despite these changes, the core philosophy remained intact. Avoid attention, avoid unnecessary risk, preserve assets, think long-term. This mindset shaped how the network responded to major disruptions. During the 2008 financial crisis, thousands of hospitality businesses failed. Hotel chains closed properties. Independent owners defaulted on loans. Patel families were rarely forced sellers. Debt levels were low. Assets were already paid down. They waited, then they bought, often at discounts. The same pattern repeated during later disruptions. When travel demand collapsed, weaker operators exited. Patel families consolidated, not aggressively, selectively. They evaluated locations carefully. They only acquired properties that fit long-term demand. Each crisis removed competition. Each crisis strengthened the network. Another advantage became clear over time. Because ownership was decentralized, the network avoided regulatory pressure. There was no antitrust case, no monopoly investigation, no central organization to target. Each motel appeared independent. Each owner appeared small. From the outside, the industry looked fragmented. In reality, ownership was highly concentrated. This concentration was not enforced. It emerged naturally through repetition, through patience, through time. Today, estimates suggest that Patel families collectively own well over half of all independent motels in the United States. Their combined assets are worth tens of billions of dollars. Their cash flow is steady, predictable, resilient. But there is no single leader, no single decision maker, no headquarters, no brand to recognize. That is what makes the network durable. It does not depend on growth. It does not depend on innovation. It depends on continuity. Each generation is trained to preserve what exists. Expansion is optional, stability is mandatory. This runs counter to most American business culture. There are no initial public offerings, no exits, no venture capital timelines. Wealth is measured in control, not headlines. As a result, the Patel Motel network operates almost entirely outside public awareness. Most guests never notice. Most competitors underestimate it. Most analysts struggle to define it. But it continues to function quietly, efficiently, relentlessly. This is not the story of a single family becoming rich. It is the story of a system built slowly, maintained carefully, and protected by staying out of sight. Most people will continue to check into these motels without ever thinking about who owns them. That is exactly how the Patel family network prefers it. If you found this video useful, consider subscribing to the channel. Videos like this take time to research and put together, and subscribing helps make more of them possible. You can also leave a like if you want to support the video, or share it with someone who might find it interesting. And if there's a story you'd like to see covered next, you can leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching.